Hey, and welcome to the mashup of Michael Saylor comments, from Bitcoin to finance to futures. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for future updates. Now let's get into it.
And of course, it's kind of simple. If I lower my security requirement by a factor of 1,000,000, I could probably move the stuff 1,000,000 times faster, right?
There's no doubt in my mind Bitcoin was a better investment at 17,000 than it was at 65,000. I take the Warren Buffett view on this.
None of these people can control Bitcoin.
Everything, right? If you want to talk about what's going to eat, forget about cryptos. There's no money in crypto. Probably the total amount of money invested in all the cryptos since the beginning of time, other than Bitcoin, probably isn't even $50 billion. Lightning is an approach. There's a bunch of other approaches.
If you lived in Argentina and your currency collapsed, and you remember the currency collapsing, or if you lived in North Korea, or if you lived in Africa and your currency collapsed and you watched your family get wiped out, then maybe you get it.
I think the way this will go is the bankers in the Western world will continue to inflate the money supply until they get to a point where they can't anymore. The central banks don't own any Bitcoin. As soon as one country starts to buy Bitcoin for their central bank, the price is going to rip.
My problem is moral hazard. If I took $500 million and I put it into a 30-year bond yielding 2% interest, and if any rational economist took over the Fed, you would think the interest rate's going to go to 4% or 5%. Everybody knows that the economy cannot function with 0% interest forever.
At the point that we start to see lightning wallets, like the only lightning wallet you want, in my opinion, is one lightning wallet that has dollars and has Bitcoin. You want to be able to move the dollars at the speed of light and the Bitcoin at the speed of light. At the point that you have that, I think that that's the killer application.
And I have said before, trading Bitcoin is a sign of lesser intellect.
Money is energy. The problem is inflation. If we're inflating at 10% a year, you've got 10 pints of blood in your body. When you go to give blood, I take a pint out. When I take a pint of blood out of your body, you lose the red blood platelets. Anybody common sense knows you run the Boston Marathon the next day, you got a problem. You can't perform as an athlete. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to replace the red blood cells. So when I take a pint of blood, you're not going to be able to perform for a month to two, probably 2 months later.
Bitcoin has outperformed the S&P, the NASDAQ, gold, silver, and bonds. Bonds are destroying wealth. Silver is destroying wealth. Gold is destroying wealth.
And our unique status as the world's largest public company holder of Bitcoin.
US dollar is going to be the big winner from the spread of Bitcoin. 5 billion people are going to have a mobile wallet on their phone. They're going to have a currency layer. When you have hundreds of millions, if not billions of people losing faith in the currency, losing faith in the banks, what do? Right? It will be your intellectual heirs that appreciate the same principles you appreciate, that are going to defend the network the same way you defended it, to believe in freedom, sovereignty, liberty. Someone 1,000 years from now will benefit from what you did. Maybe they won't know your name, but they'll benefit from it. And
for example, if I told you, would you buy a company that's going to go up in value by a factor of 10 if it printed a gap loss, or would you not?
Bitcoin's a superior investment to gold, equity, bonds, and real estate because it's digital. You can trade it 1,000,000 times faster than conventional assets using a computer. It's available. Most other assets only trade less than 20% of the time. Bitcoin's trading 168 hours a week.
And that's why the rate of expansion of the money supply is so critical. You can upgrade it, and forever is a long time. So we'll see how long they last. But if I take my Bitcoin and I use it to endow the foundation, I would think that the interest off the Bitcoin will probably power the foundation for as long as Bitcoin lasts. Gold is breaking down and being destroyed because it's an antiquated elitist store of value. It's a disaster. Don't buy gold, sell your gold. Bitcoin is the world's first digital gold on the world's first global digital monetary network.
Let's say if we buy Bitcoin and it gets valued as an intangible, and then we're forced to write it down based upon the volatility. It could happen. We could buy a bunch of Bitcoin. It could be written down by 50%.
If you interpret Bitcoin as technology instead of ideology, then instead of taking the position that we don't want to have money in the bank, our position would be, we don't mind money in the bank as long as that money is Bitcoin and not gold.
Bitcoin's crushing everybody.
MicroStrategy is an operating company that can actively manage its capital structure and its business operations with more flexibility than an investment trust, which is what these spot ETFs are.
Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, they made all their money based on the digital transformation of information apps, which are non-conservative. In the thermodynamic physical sense, they are non-conservative.
On the other hand, if the value of Bitcoin doubles,
The Western world is not run by people that lost their family's life savings in Africa or South America.
Jewish journey, and I would argue that getting on a sailing ship or a wooden ship and floating around in the Atlantic Ocean for 12 weeks is a little more difficult. I had a guy come to my house. I met his son, and the next day the son brought his father, and his father could buy the entire city of Miami. And he said, well, I don't know what's going on, but I know Bitcoin is really important. And my son says, I got to sit down and listen. And so I orange pilled him for 2 hours. Cash flows faster than the rate of monetary inflation.
Makes sense for us to call ourselves a Bitcoin development company in the same way as you see a real estate development company or a petroleum development company.
I mean, Bitcoin is hope. We could put a period on it, but I think Bitcoin is transformative. So I would say the asset, decade one was entrepreneurial, experimental. Decade two is a rotation from entrepreneurs to institutions and is becoming institutionalized. So maybe decade one, you go from 0 to $1 trillion, and in decade two, you go from 1 trillion to 100 trillion. What matters is one thing is appreciating at 2% a year and the other is appreciating at 200% a year. Now, what about 6,500 other cryptocurrencies? Irrelevant. I have no heirs, but I have a foundation, and the foundation is dedicated to making education free for everybody forever. And right now, they're doing that on Saylor.org. They give away free college education. And whatever wealth I have will just flow into that foundation. And I think there's probably plenty of work to do making education free for everybody forever.